Hello, and welcome to Senior Code Review Buddy. My name is Chris, and today I'm going to walk through my initial design and tech doc for a deliberate practice application I'm going to start developing. I'll explain the initial choices I made to create what I think is a decent target for the MVP, and what tech choices I made and why. I talked about why I picked this project and some basic details about it in my previous video, which you can find in the description below. So let's start with the initial high-level summary of what I'm looking to create. I'm looking to write an application to help me use deliberate practice to improve my piano playing. Before we look at the document, let's look at what features I think I'll need for an MVP that I can use. A command line program on Windows. I don't want to worry about any UI to start, and my machine is a Windows machine, so let's just stick with Windows as well. Read a list of activities from text files on disk. Again, just reading a text file means that it's easy for me to edit myself, and I don't need any UI to set up the list of activities I want to practice. In practice mode, randomly pick one item for me to practice. After I finish practicing, it'll ask me to score how I did and store the results. Really, this is the key part of the flow, telling me what to practice and asking me how to score myself. In evaluation mode, I can see how my scores have been for all of the activities I've practiced and how they've changed over time. I do want some way to see how I've done over time and what changes have happened. And that's it. Now, is this the greatest designed application ever? Absolutely not. This is ridiculously basic. Honestly, maybe even too basic. It's a command line interface. No support for mobile or web. What am I doing? I'm trying to just do the absolute minimum I can to start. In getting the initial process down, I'll have to set up an initial repo and complete a bunch of the basic steps with repos, like setting up a style formatter and other unsexy stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I will have a working prototype, and it'll be something that I can start using right away to see how it goes. I'll probably make it a high priority to add some kind of interface so I can use the app when I'm not sitting at my main computer. Maybe a basic app or a basic web server or something. I don't really know yet. I still think this is a great starting point because it is so easy. I should have it running in no time at all. And I'll be able to see what features I actually want next as I start to use the app. One quick note that I'll address before opening the document. I didn't write my document using the TechDoc design template I've mentioned here before. So why is that? Well, it's because I felt like the initial document I wrote here would be answering different questions from what my TechDoc template is aimed at addressing. So it didn't feel like the right fit. It does have some technical components, of course, but there are also a lot of initial product questions, as simple as they are. So while I did look at my tech doc to start, it didn't seem like the right format, so I didn't use any template for this document. So this is the document, and we'll just work through it, and I'll talk my way through the stuff. So we start with the summary, which is basically what I just talked about. It's a high-level description of what the application is going to look like, but maybe with a few more details on how I think things should work in practice. So we've got loading in a list of deliberate practice activities from a text file on disk. Yep. When run in practice mode, it'll randomly pick an activity for the user to do and ask for a result until the user tells it to stop. Okay. All results will be saved to a text file on disk to persist. Yep. When run in evaluate mode, the program will show all the scores for completed activities in chronological order. All right, so with that, let's move on to the implementation details. Although, I guess before going into that, one thing that I will mention is I've made all these choices, but I haven't started any of the coding yet. So it's possible, maybe even likely, that when I start coding, I will change some of my decisions. I think that's fine because this document represents sort of my good starting point, and I don't want to be tied down to it, but I do think it was good to put it all here and figure out where I do want to start from. So, all right, going on. So we've got Loading deliberate practice activities. All right, so all activities will be loaded from a single file on disk. Yep, path to the file will be hard-coded. Yep, and it'll do the same thing with the result. I'm not going to worry about multiple files or having to define that. I'll just give a specified location for it. The file will be a basic text file, and each non-blank line will represent a deliberate practice activity. Yep, this is a very crude and very basic format, but at this time, I don't know what other information I need for an activity, so this seems fine to me now. I don't think it's going to stay in this basic format of just one line mapping directly to an activity, but I'm not sure at this time what else will be there, so I'll stick with the basic text file, and then as I sort of figure out what I think it should change, I'll change it to something else. I've personally used protobufs a lot in the past, so I suspect I might use something like that here to handle this data, but I don't think I would gain anything from using protobufs today. Yeah, the activities can be changed at any time by the user by just changing the contents of the file. Yeah, as mentioned, I do that because then I don't have to worry about any user interface or anything to change this stuff. Yeah, just be able to change it. It seems easy. I don't think time spent on an interface for this is going to be worthwhile yet. Running the app. So I've decided that when the app is run, it'll prompt the user right away to ask if we want to go in a practice run or an evaluation run. I thought about making those two different scripts or having command line flags to decide which flow to use, but neither seemed worth the effort right now. Just a basic user prompt to go one for the other seems basic, so stuck with that. Practice mode. So this is the flow that I expect or hope that I'll spend most of my time in. So when we enter practice mode, we'll load the activities from disk, and then we'll randomly pick one to do. After the user completes it, they'll offer a score of how they did, and we'll save the results to disk by appending that to the result file. The user can then repeat that or exit. So the possible scores, I just went with some basic things about like roughly how the user thinks they did on the activity. I'm not very sold on this as the scoring method, but it's something to start with. So I think the two interesting choices I made here are how the activity is selected and how we save the results. So for activity selection, it's just random. This means the user could have to do the same activity twice in a row, or even more times. Or a certain activity might only get picked once in a blue moon. And right now, I think that's fine, mostly because I don't have a better idea of how the activity selection should work. Should the activity I've done the least get picked? Should it be the one I've improved the most at? The one that I'm doing worse at? I hope that by using the app for a while, I'll get a better sense of what logic I want to use here. And yeah, I'll try to make sure that it's easy to change that logic when I have a better idea of what to do. The other interesting choice was how I decided to store the results, which I go into a little detail here. I'm going to just write out 2 lines to a result file, the activity on one line, and then the score and the date on the next. This is going to be a very ugly looking result file, and it will be just a tiny bit annoying when I want to parse it to print the results. But similar to why I'm making other choices, at this time, I'm not really sure what information I want to be storing or how I want to be querying it or what I want to be doing with that data. So I'm just picking a very basic, simple approach, once again, with the expectation that I'll get a sense of how I want to be using the data, what structures make sense, and then I'll adjust it based on that to something that's more helpful for me. And yeah, I will accept that there's a short-term trade-off that the evaluation code be a little bit annoying because it's going to be a little bit clunky to parse in stuff this way. I'll have to create maps off of it, but it's not too bad, and given how simple it still is to code, I think it's fine even when I throw it away very shortly, I'm sure. Okay, and with that, let's go on to evaluate mode. I think I've mostly explained sort of evaluate mode already. When we're in evaluation mode, the result file is going to get parsed, and we'll just output all the activities. We'll do it in alphabetical order, and then within each activity, we'll print the name of the activity, number of times practiced, the first and last time I practiced it, and then I'll list the scores in chronological order. This is pretty basic, but it's because I'm not really sure what I want here yet. So I'll just get something so I can see the data, and I expect this to evolve a lot over time. And here we are at the tech stack where I've made some decisions about what tech stack and things I'm going to be using for this project. So I've already decided it's going to be a command line tool. Talked about that earlier. And because of that, I've decided that I'm going to use Python as the language. Python is one of the most popular languages right now, and I do want this to be accessible to as many people as possible. I also have a lot of experience with Python compared to other languages, so it seems a good choice. I'm going to use Git for source control, and I'll have it up on GitHub. I've got the URL here. You'll also be able to find a link to the repo in the description below. I'm going to use Conda and pip with it to do sort of my dependency management. I personally like using Conda because I appreciate the ability that I can just specify which version of Python I want to use with it. And it tends to be, with some of the ones I've used, I just find it the easiest that if I have to completely move over to a new machine, it does a good enough job of copying all the dependencies and things I need. I really don't like having to set up other stuff. I really appreciate if I can just have everything listed within a single tool. For the unit test framework, I've decided I'm actually going to use PyTest. I've heard a lot of good things about it over the years. Just never got around to using it. Just usually used unit test as the built-in one because that's tended to be what the places I had were using. So I'll try PyTest. Then for some style enforcement, I'm going to use Black, iSort, and Flake8. Style enforcement style guides. These are just the ones I have found myself personally using the most, so I'm familiar with them. They seem good. It's not to say you have to use these ones, but these are the ones that I kind of like using. While Python is a dynamic language, obviously, I really appreciate typing in it. I have found that it has helped a lot for readability and catching issues, so I will use MyPy to run some static type checking. And then lastly, I'm going to use CircleCI to run my GitHub status checks. This isn't something I've used before anywhere, so this will be a completely new thing for me and hopefully a good learning experience. And that's the tech stack. So that's my breakdown, plan, strategy. What do you think of my choices? Would you have picked a different set of MVP features or different tech dependencies? Leave a comment below telling me about your choices and why you made them. I'll be starting on the code soon, so hopefully the next video in this series will have some code to show. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button below and subscribing. If you have any other comments, code you'd like me to review, or ideas you'd like me to talk about, please leave a comment below or reach me at chris@seniorcodereviewbuddy.com. Thanks, and have a great day.